Welcome to Pale Blue Pod, the astronomy podcast for people who are overwhelmed by the universe but want to be its friend.
Hi, that's us. I am Dr. Moiya McTier. I'm an astrophysicist, a folklorist, and a friend to the universe, and also a friend to my co-host.
A friend to me. And I'm Corinne Caputo. I'm also a friend to the universe and a friend to my co-host. And that's why we're in one of our spots. This is like our go-to hangout spot sometimes. We are in our time machine. You've heard about it before.
Yeah, our custom-built fancy AF time machine that takes us multiple jumps through time in the past and in the future, wherever we want to go.
It's really quite a feat that we have one of these.
But it was donated. We did not purchase this with our own funds.
This is what happens when you become famous online. They give you time machines. It's easy.
Yes. We are sponsored by Big Time here on this show, and for our service, they have given us their one of their time machines. But that should be a hint, listeners, that we are traveling through time this week in this episode. We're going to do another one of the This Week in Astronomy History episodes, talking about the week from September 1st to September 8th. That's Sunday to Sunday, which might be a little bit of a stretch, but that's fine. That's fine.
We're all flexible here.
Well, I'm not very flexible, but I am working on it. Stretching was one of my New Year's resolutions, and I'm doing okay.
I know someone else who their New Year's resolution was to get a split this year.
Oh, that's bold. I just want to not creak when I get up from the couch.
Totally.
I'm at that age. All right, Corinne, what year are we traveling to first?
Okay, first we're going to 1859.
Ooh, the fashion. Lots of big skirts.
Huge skirts. This is not something I'd heard of before I researched for this episode. It's called the Carrington event. And in August of 1859, this happened on September 1st, 1859. So end of August, astronomers were looking outside with fascination, and the number of sunspots was growing that they were witnessing. And among those astronomers was Richard Carrington, an amateur sky watcher in near London in England. He was in this town called Red Hill. And on September 1st, as he was sketching the sunspots, there was a sudden flash of bright light, and Carrington described it as a white light flare, according to a NASA space flight log. And the whole event lasted about 5 minutes. The flare was a huge coronal mass ejection, and this became known as the Carrington event. It was the most powerful geomagnetic storm on record, and it was caused by a massive solar flare that led to this CME hitting Earth's magnetosphere. And it wreaked havoc on technology. So
yeah, they can be pretty impactful.
Yes. One article says Earth fell silent as the telegraph communications around the world failed. And I'm trying to map this onto today. And I'm like, the rate at which we communicate today is so different than 1859. And if that felt quiet, imagine what we'd be feeling.
It would be pretty disastrous if a coronal mass ejection of that size went off today.
So there were reports of sparks showering from telegraph machines, and operators were getting these electric shocks, and papers were getting set on fire by rogue sparks among all of this. So it was just disastrous in many ways. And when the telegraph workers returned to work the next day, the effects of the event were still being felt as the atmosphere was still really charged. And History.com reported that the American Telegraph Company employees found it impossible to transmit or receive dispatches. And alarmingly, they found that they could, however, unplug their batteries and transmit messages to Portland, Maine, using only the auroral current, according to Ars Technica. So Portland, Maine, home of me.
Is that because the aurora was over Portland, so the trail of the electrons was kind of leading there?
That is what it sounds like. There was some kind of auroral current that allowed, they didn't need their batteries. They could get messages directly to I don't know what that would mean for Portland, Maine, if now you're responsible for all the messages. Try getting them somewhere else. I don't know.
That's too much pressure for
me. I'm glad I'm not involved in the solving of this problem. But of course, the event led to auroras in the sky, which were visible as far south as the Caribbean.
Wow, what a treat.
It's crazy. And researchers from Lloyd's of London and the Atmospheric and Environmental Research Agency in the U.S. have estimated that a Carrington-class event today would be between $0.6 and $2.6 trillion in damages to the U.S. alone, according to NASA.
I totally believe it. Because
$2.6 trillion.
Yeah, the way that these coronal mass ejections just interfere with the way electrons move through our electricity grid is staggering. And so much of our industry, so much of our culture, so much of our society is based on electricity these days.
Yep.
It would be the, what was it, CrowdStrike? It would be the CrowdStrike outage, on level 11. It would be awful.
It feels like the premise to some movie. I'm sure that movie exists. If it doesn't already, it's definitely in the works. But it seems like the setup for kind of like that Julia Roberts horror movie that was out on Netflix last year.
Which one?
I wish I could remember the name.
All right,
Clearly, it was forgettable. But it was just like, suddenly communications are down and like, what do you do next?
Yeah. What would you do next?
Oh my God, I'd be so scared. I would probably try to get to my people. Like if I'm alone, I would like go towards family or something. And then kind of wait it out. Like I would be trying my best not to panic. And maybe I would be looking for a radio. I'd probably be like, why don't I have a radio? Or like, why don't I have some kind of, we'd maybe dig out our sat phone. We have like a sat device from this like loner hiking trip Eli did, or he needed like an emergency phone.
But wouldn't satellites also be affected?
I assume. But I'd be trying to get any other form of tech besides my phone.
Right. I think you need to start training the homing pigeons now.
Exactly. There are so many seagulls outside my window. Maybe they would be willing to do something for me for a change.
Mm-hmm. I would watch that movie, actually. A movie of
me
you
trying to befriend
a seagull to be a homing pigeon.
Yeah, and he's so distracted by French fries the whole time.
But then at the end of the movie, when you really need it most, the seagull does deliver the message and you get out safely.
Yes, exactly. And there's like a single fry that falls.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, I don't know what I would do. My parents live in Maine. I guess I could try to get up there, but through what? Like hitchhiking? No, I would die immediately.
I saw a hitchhiker this morning for the first time in my life.
They still
I saw
are doing
a person trying to hitchhike, and I felt bad we didn't pick them up, but then I was like, that is actually scary to me, and I'm glad I did not involve myself. But yeah, it's alive and well.
It's alive and well. I hope they are also alive and well.
Oh yeah, they were in a very busy town, so
okay, good.
They might have been pranking me.
What a prank! Maybe they were just saying, "Good job driving."
Yeah,
like,
maybe it was
great.
a thumbs up, which I do need when I'm driving.
All right. Is that all we wanted to explore here in 1859?
That's what I've got, and we'll just cross our fingers that it doesn't happen again.
Okay. I am going to step out to purchase a hoop skirt, and then we'll jump to the next date. I'm actually going to take us to sometime much more recent in history. We're going just to last year, September 2nd, 2023, when India launched Aditya L1, which was their first space-based mission to study the sun. Did you hear about Aditya when it was launching?
No. I mean, maybe I did, but I might be confusing it with another mission.
I think maybe, because this Aditya mission was launched just a week after the Chandrayaan-3 mission, which went to the moon. And I think that say that. Yeah, I think that got a lot of attention.
I remember a moon-based mission from India that got a lot of attention because was it also successful?
Yes, it was a success.
Yeah.
It was a roaring success. They actually beat out Russia to become the first nation to ever successfully land at the South Pole of the moon.
Cool.
And they're like getting measurements from that still, I think. But that was a huge success. And then right on its tails, kind of in an effort to get India's space research organization, which is called the Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO, on the international stage, or I guess on the international podium for space travel, because right now the US, Russia, and China are really, and the European Space Agency are really at the top of launching things into space, and India wants to get in that group. So they did these 2 very successful launches just last year.
Cool.
Aditya is inspired by mythology, like the name comes from mythology. It's a group of deities, often solar deities, but it's also kind of a family group of gods or like devas in Hindu mythology. And it's an alternate name for Surya, who is the Hindu god of the sun. So they're on it when it comes to naming their missions after mythological characters.
Cool.
The mission, or the spacecraft, traveled for about 4 months. It went 1.5 million kilometers to reach L1. Do you remember what L2 is?
No, I don't think I do. Is that where, like, I don't know, too hot? It's like some other differentiation.
Yeah, it's a special place where JWST and a lot of other telescopes orbit. Do you remember why? And it's okay if not.
This is the easiest answer. It's not the answer. It's safer there for them.
Yeah. I'll take it. So these L1 and L2 and L3, these are called Lagrange points. These are places...
I remember Lagrange.
Yes, Lagrange, our good old buddy. The Lagrange points are places in an orbit between 2 or 3 or more bodies, but usually 2, where the gravity between them kind of cancels out. So if you have a spacecraft that's orbiting that spot, it doesn't have to use fuel to try and keep itself steady.
It's kind of, sure,
yeah,
in the
it's
middle
kind of
there.
held in place. So L2, where JWST is on the other side of the moon, but L1 is between us and the sun. So they sent Aditya to orbit L1 so that it could always be looking at the sun. And it's going to be between us and the sun because it orbits there. It has a bunch of instruments on it. I think it had something like 7 different instruments, and they are all meant to study the sun's corona, which is its outer atmosphere, but also the wind of charged particles that the sun sends off. So the things that are responsible for stripping Mercury of most of its atmosphere and, creating the aurora and different planets in the solar system. But they want to understand more about how the solar wind works and what it's made of. And then they want to understand the sun's magnetic activity. So the instruments on board are a coronagraph, which can block out the biggest, like the disk of the sun, so you can just see the wispy corona. It also has an imager that's really good at taking pictures of the sun in specific wavelengths. It has 2 different spectrographs, one for high energy and one for low energy, so they're paying attention to different parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. Then they also have a particle analyzer to kind of capture and analyze the ions, the physical ions that are coming off of the sun in the solar wind, and then they can analyze them in some type of a mass spectrometer maybe, or just like some type of thing to analyze the chemistry, which is really cool. They also have something similar for plasma, where they can analyze the composition and behavior of the plasma. And then they have advanced magnometers to measure magnetic activity. So it's a pretty hefty mission.
If only this was around during the Carrington event.
Yes, India, you're just like 180 years too late.
That's very exciting.
It is. It arrived at L1 in January of this year, on January 25th, 2024, and they're starting to take measurements, and we're starting to get information back. But it's an active, ongoing mission, and I'm excited to see what it tells us about the sun in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I hope it lives a long life like so many other space missions.
Me too. So many of them are meant to last just like 1, 2, 3 years, and then they last a decade. So I hope that this does that. But space is a really kind of caustic environment, and it's closer to the sun, so it's going to have to deal with a lot of that energy and radiation. But we'll see how it lasts.
Exciting. Okay, well, my next event, we're going to go back in time to 1977. September 5th, 1977 was the launch of Voyager 1.
Oh, good. We haven't talked about Voyager enough on this show.
We've talked about it in bits and pieces. And I think it is one of my favorite missions because it holds the golden record, which we have talked about on the pod. But I'll tell you a little bit about the mission first. So NASA launched this spacecraft 47 years ago in 1977, and it became one of the most important missions in the history of space exploration. It provided tons and tons of images and data of like the outer planets, and it became the first human-made object to enter interstellar space in 2012.
Yeah, it did. I know a few astronomers that have a tattoo of the Voyager flight path. It's really nice.
I have a friend who has part of the golden record tattooed on his chest, I think.
Ooh, stunning.
It's like the part that's like a map of where we are in the universe.
The pulsar
like the
map.
dots. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I also know people with the pulsar map tattoo.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Voyager has traveled 11 billion miles. So that's kind of the equivalent of circling Earth 440,000 times.
That's so much.
It's so much.
Busy bee.
But in terms of light years, it hasn't left the neighborhood. It will still take 40,000 years to reach only 2 light years from the sun. Mm-hmm. That's how big it is out there.
Mm-hmm. That's how fast light is.
Yeah, it's really fast. But I think I love it so much because it carries messages to... It's a very hopeful mission to me of if alien life were to find this or communicate. It has audio-visual recordings and just like images etched into pieces of it to kind of get the message out that we are intelligent life. It's kind of a time capsule too of the period. I know we chatted about some of the pictures that are on there, but it does feel like this incredible, I don't know, swab of what life was like in the late 70s. And it has greetings in over 55 languages, lots of scientific knowledge. It has pieces of music and earth sounds like waves crashing on the shore. I love sharing those things with others. Hopefully it'll be... I love how hopeful it is. I think it's really fun to think about someone receiving a letter like that and it being met with curiosity and excitement and not fear like so many alien movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was such an achievement for humanity. It's not easy to figure out what to put on a record like that to potentially be interpreted by completely different species.
Yeah.
And it's also not easy to design a spacecraft that can leave our solar system for the first time.
Yeah.
So the Voyager mission was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Are we still getting information from it? Are they still transmitting back? I know one of them stopped, but I don't know if both have.
I was trying to figure that out this morning, but I think we're not.
Okay.
But let me check. It might still be working. This was updated in June 2024. Several months after a grave computer problem seemed to spell the end for Voyager 1, NASA announced it had restored the spacecraft to working order. She's alive and well out there.
Look at you go, Voyager, all the way from 1977 with your bell bottoms, your tie-dye hairband holding back your fro. I'm assuming that the Voyager 1 spacecraft has an afro. That's my headcanon. That's
exactly how I'm picturing it.
I love that. I love that for it. We should do an episode at some point about the Voyager missions.
Yes, that'd be great. Hey, it's Corinne. I just wanted to give a quick thank you to our Sun-like stars, Scott Reynolds, Ian O'Leary, Augustin, and Tom T. Patrons get to hear their name on this show and make their mark on our patron star chart and get research notes for every episode, all by supporting us on Patreon for just about $1 per episode. And if you sign up for an annual membership, you get a 13% discount. Find the star chart, Patreon info, and more at our website, palebluepod.com, or by going right to patreon.com/palebluepod. And of course, if you can't support us financially, that's totally fine. We love you so much. Consider reviewing the show on whatever app you use and share it with your friends. And I have another podcast recommendation for you. Join the Party is an actual play podcast with tangible worlds and genre-pushing storytelling and collaborators who make each other laugh every week. DM Eric and the emphatic players Amanda, Brandon, and Julia welcome everyone to the table, from longtime tabletop role-playing game players to folks who've never touched a role-playing game before. You can hop into the current campaign, which is a pirate story set in a world of plant and bug folk, or marathon completed stories with the Campaign, a Monster of the Week kind of game set in a weird summer camp, which is perfect for the season. Campaign 2 is a modern superhero game, and Campaign 1 is this high fantasy story that I know you'll love. Every month, they also release the After Party, where they answer your questions about the show and how they play the game, so you'll really get the whole experience. So pull up a chair and join the party. Search for Join the Party in your podcast app or go to jointhepartypod.com. Okay, back to our show.
All right. From 1977, I'm going to take us back further in time to 1618.
That's far back.
It's far back. Also big skirts. It's far enough back that they're probably using lead as face makeup.
Totally.
You cannot get dressed alone. You have to have several people tying the stuff on your corsets. Yeah, so we're in 1618. It was on September 6th of that year that Johannes Kepler observed the first of 3 great comets that were all visible over Europe in 1618, and that's unusual. You don't usually get large comets that are visible to the unaided eye all in one year. They're usually more spaced out than that. But in that year, Kepler observed them and was the first to observe a comet through a telescope, because several people knew about comets, although they didn't know what they were. This was a time when people disagreed about what comets were made of and even where they were in the distance from Earth. This was also a time when not everyone had accepted that the Earth orbited around the sun. So sometimes people said that the comets were atmospheric aberrations, that they were clouds or spots of hot air in our atmosphere. That's one of the hypotheses that Galileo had. Other people thought that they were little rocky bodies between us and the moon, which is kind of right. They can orbit between us and the moon, but they orbit, the sun more broadly. Or maybe they were other rocks orbiting the sun, but the sun itself still orbited the Earth. So there were lots of ideas about comets floating around.
Sure.
But on September 6th, Kepler observed through a telescope the comet C1618-Q1. These days, most comets are named after the person who discovers them, but that wasn't really a convention until the mid to late 1700s, maybe even 1800s. So they weren't naming this after Kepler, even though he didn't discover it. But he was in Linz, Australia in September, and he had heard that some people in Hungary had observed this comet the month before, at the end of August. And so he went out with his telescope and he observed this C1618-Q1, and then he saw 2 more in November of that same year. There was one on November 10th and one on November 29th. And the third comet was the really big one. It was so bright that it was visible during the day.
Whoa.
And it was so big that it had 2 tails coming off of it instead of just one. So it had a split tail, and the tail stretched 100 degrees across the sky. That's like more than half of the view of the sky that you have at any given time. So yeah, it was a really long tail, and it was observed for 3 months. Kepler was able to study it for a really long time and track its motion and position over that time. And his study of these 3 comets helped him further his understanding of planetary motion. He was working with Tycho Brahe and studying the motion of Mars and kind of developed his laws of planetary motion that way. But the comets helped him generalize those laws to other orbiting bodies, not just planets.
Cool.
Yeah. So those were 3 great comets in one year. I think that's only happened a couple of times since. And it's a really rare event. So he was lucky. And it helped us understand cool stuff.
Yeah, that feels very much like, I mean, not literally the stars have aligned, but very like the stars have aligned for you to be able to see all of this in one September.
That was Kepler. He holds a special place in my heart, as I've said before on the pod. I am a Kepler spacecraft girly, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, the person himself was a bit more complicated, but he did cool work.
Totally. All right, my final piece takes us to 1976. I'm really hovering in the 70s.
Yeah, we got to get you a very time-appropriate outfit.
I know. I do love bell-bottoms. I think I've always looked good in them. Well, September 3rd, 1976... Viking 2, a NASA spacecraft, landed on Mars.
Yay! Oh, the 70s were such a good time for space.
Yeah, I really haven't thought about how exciting that must have been. We'd just been on the moon not 7 years before, and now we're landed on Mars. It must feel like the future.
Yeah.
So Viking 2 was part of NASA's early 2-part mission to investigate Mars and search for signs of life. Neither Viking 1 nor Viking 2 found traces of life, but they did find all the elements essential to life on Earth. So we know that Mars has carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus. Thank you to the Vikings for letting us know. And I learned that Viking 1 and Viking 2 were 4,000 miles apart on Mars.
Oh.
And I don't think we need to personify everything, but they were far away from each other.
Long distance relationship.
It really was.
But they made it work.
Not everyone can, but they did it. So Viking 2, it had a lander and an orbiter that was designed to take high-res images and study the Martian surface and atmosphere. And if you've looked at pictures of Mars, even old pictures, like the ones that Viking 2 took, like look great. They look just like kind of the pictures we're getting now. Like Mars has that very movie set look to me. Like every picture I've seen of the Martian surface, I'm like, this could easily just be a green screen with fake rocks on the ground.
Yeah.
The Viking 2 orbiter functioned until July 25th, 1978, but we got data from the Viking 2 lander April 11th, 1980 was the last bit of data.
Hey, 4 years. That's nice.
Not bad. Not bad.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the name for this spacecraft and orbiter and lander?
Historically, I'm not knowledgeable on the Vikings, so I really can't say how I feel about that. I like the idea of like an explorer.
Yeah.
Some kind of explorer name for these guys.
I can see your point there, because like the Vikings maybe are a more violent class of explorer than we could have named them after.
Yeah.
But they were explorers. I mean,
there they go.
They traveled across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
They found North America. They were doing their thing. Are we ready for our last jump through time?
Oh yeah. Let's go. I think I have the energy for one more.
Great. And we have enough fuel to do one more backwards leap and then we'll go back home. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm taking us to September 8th, 1966, when the first episode of Star Trek, the original series, was broadcast.
Oh my God, that's so fun!
Isn't it? And now September 8th is known as Star Trek Day.
I did not know that. That's exciting.
Neither did I know. I feel like I've been missing out on some celebration that I will join in on in the future. But for some context, historical context, September 8th, 1966 is when the season 1, episode 1, called The Man Trap, was broadcast in the U.S. And it introduced Gene Roddenberry's series to the entire world, or to the U.S. I don't think it was internationally broadcast until later. But this was actually after a complicated journey for Star Trek. The original pilot was rejected by NBC, and this was actually the 6th episode of Star Trek that they produced. And they chose it as the pilot because it had the most action of any of the episodes they'd already made.
Huh. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Have you seen this? Are you a Star Trek fan?
I must have seen it, but not as an adult. I think I watched it with my dad as a kid.
Nice. So I'll give you a little summary of the episode. The whole series focuses on the crew of the Starship Enterprise, and you've probably heard of Captain Kirk, who's the captain of the ship. There's is he Lieutenant Spock? There's a Dr. Bones or something. Like there are these characters that people love to talk about, and in this pilot episode, the Enterprise visits a planet to check on an archaeology team that was stationed there to do some studies. One of the researchers in the archaeology team is Dr. Bones's or Dr. McCoy's ex-girlfriend. And so there's that interesting interpersonal connection. And this is worthy of an episode because when the Enterprise visits this planet, crewmen keep dying mysteriously. And when they're found, they have all these tentacle marks on their bodies, and there are signs that all of the salt was drained from their bodies.
Ooh, okay, interesting. What could be doing that?
Yeah, interesting. There's like a salt vampire going around in the form of an octopus. And it turns out that there is a shape-shifting creature who was pretending to be the lady archaeologist and had just lured all of these men in with her good looks and then fed off of them in some way.
Classic siren mermaid.
Yeah, classic siren mermaid. And I feel like full disclosure, I did not watch the original series. I watched a bunch of the later ones when I was growing up. But from what I've heard, that vibe of, like, it's a honeypot, or like it's a woman setting a trap, or like the idea of humans having all of these like sexual relationships with aliens, from what I've heard, it carries that through the series.
Yeah, that's the go-to like formula for these episodes. I love that.
The original series did only get 3 seasons, but it inspired over a dozen spin-off series and multiple movies in a franchise that is now worth, how much do you think, Corinne? How much do you think the Star Trek franchise?
That's such a question. Like $1 billion. Higher? Higher than $1 billion?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, billions are so big. So 2 billion? Like how much? I'm adding so much money every time I add $1 billion.
You are. Corinne, the franchise is worth more than $11 billion.
Wow.
It's been so successful. There are animated versions of it. There have been musical episodes of it. There have been multiple movies, and across decades, Star Trek has inspired countless people's imagination. People really love this series, so much so that when the original series was canceled, or when at the end of the second season, when they were in danger of being canceled, the fans rallied, they got a 3rd season. But then it was canceled, the fans rallied again, but rebooting wasn't the norm back then. Like it was a different time in the TV and film industry where they wanted new content, which is such a novel concept.
Yeah, imagine that.
Imagine that. So they weren't going to bring back the original series, but Gene Roddenberry developed The Next Generation, which premiered in September of 1987. So it took about 20 years to get another Star Trek on the line, and that's in part because of some funding stuff, because of public sentiment about space. The space shuttle program had some hiccups, and NASA had some funding cutbacks. So there really is a way that you can see how like pop culture and media influence real space industry stuff.
Yeah, sure.
But the anniversary of the pilot's airing kind of became a day for franchise activism and celebration. If the franchise is in trouble, you're going to try to bring it back. And if it's doing well, then you're going to celebrate its wins. Yeah. This was an unofficial thing that fans kind of believed in for many years. But in 2020, Paramount, which now is doing a lot of the Star Trek remakes or like sequel series, but Paramount declared in 2020 that there would be an official Star Trek Day on September 8th.
That's so fun.
It is very fun. It was definitely just a marketing ploy.
100%. It's a reason to sell more stuff.
Exactly. There's no more noble cause in today's day and age. But they declared that this would be an official day, and then they set up virtual panels with actors and producers from all across the Star Trek series. And then they had to cut it back because of COVID. But yeah, there is now an official Star Trek Day every September 8th.
Love it.
Mm-hmm. So, Corinne, I wanted to ask, what is your favorite Star Trek, if you have any? Or maybe a character, if you can't choose a series?
I don't know if this is a good Star Trek. I just remember it was like the first Star Trek that I watched. Or maybe not the first one, but Star Trek Voyager. Mm-hmm. That's what was airing like during like peak memory making time in my childhood. And I remember the character 7 of 9. They called her Seven. Just this gorgeous woman. I remember her being on the show. I remember being very like taken by how beautiful she was and like her cool eyepiece. Mm-hmm. She also looks a lot like my mom. So my mom had like a I gotta be 7 for Halloween kind of vibe.
Nice.
And I think she once did print out a piece of paper and taped it to her face to kind of look like the thing that Seven has.
Legendary behavior from your mom.
Uh-huh.
I'm also now picturing you just Googling, is Star Trek Voyager a good Star Trek?
Yeah, I know. I'm like, is this one that we like?
How many times has this series been canceled?
Yeah.
Socially. That's also my favorite Star Trek series.
Oh.
I really like Captain Janeway. I love B'Elanna Torres. I think she was the first time I ever saw a Black woman in like a STEM role on screen. I liked the overarching, I think, story of Voyager more than others.
Uh-huh. I wish I remembered more of the content.
Yeah. I should rewatch.
Yeah. Fall is when I like to do a rewatch of a show. So this might be the time.
Okay. What an interesting schedule.
I think it's like a back to school thing. It started with rewatching Gilmore Girls for the fall. And
Excellent
then
choice.
I think I did that enough falls in a row that it was like, well, I feel like I just watched this.
Mm-hmm.
So then it'll be like Twin Peaks or maybe like Mad Men, which are the two ends of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Nice. Okay, I think our ship is ready to go back to our present time. So let's do that. And I also want us to think about the future. We're not going to jump to the future. That's a lot more fuel expensive than I'm willing to put up with. But let's just imagine what we think might happen in the future.
You know, an idea came to me when we were talking about the golden record. I can imagine maybe, let's say 10 years from now, September of 2034, there's been a call to, honestly, 7 years from now. Ooh. 7. There's been a call from maybe NASA and the ESA or some other space agencies have teamed up and put out a call for like the next golden record, like content for it. Mm-hmm. And everyone is submitting original songs that they should put. Like, it's like we're going to vote on like 3 songs that represent us as the world and then 1 original song just for this mission. And everyone's like scrambling to submit their content.
Yeah. What genre song would you submit?
I think we should it's going to depend on what other songs they put on there, but I'm having a pop summer fall, so I think I'm leaning towards that. I would love if it was something a little poetic in lyrics and not total like bubblegum, but maybe they need to know that we like to have fun too. Yeah.
I don't know if they'll know what fun means, but it should be... We should present it as an option.
100%. See what sticks.
I love that. I look forward to seeing your submission to that contest.
Oh my gosh. I think I did vow I would never sing in front of a crowd, so this will be tough for me.
It doesn't have to be singing. You know, there's percussive music. There's electronic music. I think you could do it.
True. I'll bang on the drum.
Yeah. So that's in September of 2031.
Yes.
Cool.
So it's coming up if everyone needs.
We'll check back.
Yeah.
I predict that in September of 2050, we are going to launch our first long-term space habitat experiment in orbit. Because we've done a bunch of like Mars simulator habitat experiments here on Earth, and we've talked about them before. But I think we're going to realize that setting up a civilization on Mars is not going to work, and I think we're going to pivot to the multi-generational spaceships, and we're going to have to experiment to see what extended like social life would be like in orbit.
Absolutely. I can see that. I would be really excited to see that launch.
Yeah, I would be excited to see the selection process for that launch.
Yes. I think we mentioned it once before on this, but like, I feel like you got to bring in a reality TV producer to make sure the personalities can mesh.
100%. They know the human psyche better than everyone. All right. Well, those are our predictions. We'll come back in 2031 and 2050 to check if we're right.
Yep.
But until then, no matter what your favorite year in history is, you're still space.
You are.
Bye. Pale Blue Pod was created by Moiya McTier and Corinne Caputo with help from the Multitude Productions team. Our theme music is by Evan Johnston, and our cover art is by Shay McMullen. Our audio editing is handled by the incomparable Misha Stanton.
Stay in touch with us and the universe by following @PaleBluePod on Twitter and Instagram, or check out our website, palebluepod.com. We're a member of Multitude, an independent podcast collective and production studio. If you like Pale Blue Pod, you will love the other shows that live on our website at multitude.productions.
If you want to support Pale Blue Pod financially, join our community over at patreon.com/palebluepod. For just about $1 per episode, you get a shout out on one of our shows and access to director's commentary for each episode. The very best way, though, to help Pale Blue Pod grow is to share it with your friends. So send this episode, this link, to one person who you think will like it, and we will appreciate you for forever.
Thanks for listening to Pale Blue Pod. You'll hear us again next week.
Bye.